That's a great place to start, and we're going to get to the Nets in probably about 10 minutes-ish, but I want to start with ring ceremony because what happened right after the ring ceremony is the Lakers lost the game. First quarter, down 22 points. They clawed back to tie it a number of times. They never got over the hump. They seem to be treating it somewhat like a preseason game. LeBron tweaks his ankle barely. The guy hasn't had a sprained ankle in 18 years. I don't think he suffered one last night. They take him out of the game in the fourth quarter, never put him back in. He plays less than 30 minutes. They played a dozen different people trying out different rotations, and the Clippers get an oddly important win for them, only important because they had that 22-point lead. You can't suffer the absolute meltdown of meltdowns they suffered against the Nuggets and then start the next season 90 days later, or for the Clippers, I guess 101 days later, by blowing a 20-point first quarter lead. So an oddly important game for the Clippers. Anyone concerned about the Lakers, I think they're out of their mind. This is going to be the best team in basketball by a wide margin. But I do think there is a little bit of sentiment of, oh, look, Clippers. Could this be the Clippers team so many people expected to see last year? A Clippers team that when your old buddy Nick Wright was saying all year long they won't even make the conference finals was called a hater and an idiot and a hot taker. Can't actually believe that. And I got to tell you, I watched this game very closely, and I wasn't that high on the Clippers going into the game. I think they won't make the conference finals again. I don't think they're one of the two best teams in the West. I'm not sure they're one of the three best teams in the West. I watched this game last night. I feel a little bit worse about them. Obviously, Paul George was great. Kawhi had an atypically inefficient night, but you basically know what you're going to get from Kawhi on the nights he plays, and you know what you're going to get from Paul George throughout the regular season. In the postseason, it's a little more dicey. But you looked at the rest of that rotation, and I know Marcus Morris wasn't there. Well, he was there. He was actually videotaping his brother getting a ring with the Lakers, but he wasn't playing. But, so you don't have Marcus Morris? So Nick Batum is in your starting lineup? Nick Batum is going to be in your rotation? Even if he's not going to be in your starting lineup, when Morris comes back, Nick Batum, who the Charlotte Hornets, not exactly a bastion of winning basketball, they were like, you know what? We'd rather pay Gordon Hayward $120 million to play for us and replace Nick Batum, and Nick Batum $27 million to play for anybody else. The Hornets paid him to go away. The Clippers start him on opening night. And then I looked at the other guys getting minutes. I know that they paid Luke Kennard like he's a highly valuable NBA player, but at no point in his career have I ever thought that about him. Maybe one day he'll be. I don't think that day will be this year. Patrick Patterson is heavily involved. And then it's like, wait, it's the same problems they had last year. The backcourt has a great offensive player in Lou Williams, who is historically, look it up, one of the worst and most inconsistent playoff performers. Actually, he's pretty consistently bad in the playoffs we've had in recent NBA history. And then a one-way defensive player in Patrick Beverley. And it's like, oh, Montrezl Harrell's gone. Folks, Montrezl Harrell was important for them last year, but we replaced him with Serge Ibaka. Congrats. You replaced the third most important player on your team with a guy who was the fourth most important player on a team that couldn't get out of the second round in the East last year. I just don't see it. And I didn't see it last year with the Clippers. And listen, nobody likes a guy who's, says, I told you so, but I told you so, America. And I don't see it this year. The Lakers will be fine. I think the Lakers will lose on Christmas, by the way. I think they're going to start 0-2. And actually, that for us gamblers out there that didn't want to bet the Lakers before the year because the odds were just too low, maybe the odds get a little bit better. But there is nothing I saw last night from the Clippers that makes me think they are going to be markedly better than they were last year. And no matter what folks try to tell you, what the Clippers were last year was a second-tier team. They weren't good enough to beat the Nuggets, who weren't good enough to even put a slight scare into the Lakers. So, listen, congrats to the Clippers' first win in 106 days since they went up 3-1 on the Nuggets in the second round. First win against the Lakers in 362 days. I would imagine last night's got to be a top 10 moment in Clippers history. It's like acquiring Chris Paul, the Chris Paul buzzer beater against the Spurs, beating the Lakers on Christmas last year, beating the Lakers on opening day. Like, these are the best moments in the history of the franchise. Drafting Danny Manning. So congrats to him for it, but I don't think they're going to be much better. Then there was the early game. And like I said, we'll talk about the Nets shortly, but I want to talk about the team on the other side, which was the Warriors. And Steph Curry, who let me back up a bit. I've been working on a project in my spare time during quarantine, the 50 best players of the last 50 years of the NBA. So essentially Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to right now, who are the 50 best guys. So we're removing the Russells and the Wilts, Elgin Baylor, Jerry West, Oscar Robertson, those guys. I've got Steph Curry 13th as the 13th greatest player of essentially the modern era. And I feel good about that. I've got Kevin Durant 12. Just those two guys neck and neck. Right behind Dr. J and Moses Malone. Ahead of Dirk, ahead of Isaiah Thomas, ahead of Kevin Garnett, ahead of, well, basically everyone except for the 10 greatest players ever. But here is what I am concerned about for Steph and for the Warriors. I think this year is going to expose, not expose Steph as a player, but expose a part of Steph Curry's game that a lot of us, even those of us who say greatest shooter ever, one of the greatest teammates ever, a great champion, all these things, have always quietly suspected, but have never been able to see, which is, all right, we know Steph is the perfect piece on a great team. But can he carry a bad team? Not to a championship, not to 55 wins. How about to the playoffs? If not to the playoffs, to a 500 record. Because there's a really weird, there's like in the NBA these days, there's people that are fans of teams, but almost more than that, there's people that are fans of players. And there is this, the Steph Hive, Russ, Harden, Chris Paul once upon a time had a pretty fervent fan base. And all the point guard fans kind of argue amongst each other. And when Russ averaged his triple-double, and folks thought he shouldn't have won that MVP, and when Harden averaged 35 a game and then 33 a game, what Steph fans would say is, man, let Steph Curry have that usage rate. Let Steph Curry get to run that ISO ball, that style of offense. He would show the world what he could do in that system. Instead, he's running a team system, team-friendly system, the beautiful basketball that Steve Kerr learned from Greg Popovich, all of it. And that seemed like a legitimate argument. The counterpoint is this. Steph has never needed to do that, what Russ had to do the year KD left or the year KD was injured, what Harden had to do his first year in Houston and the year before they got Chris Paul in Houston, which is be an offense unto himself. Say, listen, can't win a title, but we're going to get to 45 wins plus. We're going to get to the playoffs, and it's going to be all through me. Steph's never had to do that. And what I fear we're going to find out this year is that's very good because he can't. And that's not a massive indictment. But when we're talking about the 20 greatest players in the history of the game, it's a little indictment. It's got to matter somewhat. Who are the best point guards of the last 20 years? Basically post-Jason Kidd, so the last 15 years. Chris Paul, Harden, Russ, Steph. I think everyone on the all-time player pyramid has Steph above all those guys. He's got 3 championships. Those 3 guys combined have 0. He's got 2 MVPs. Those 3 guys combined have 2. He is without question the best of those 4. But all of those 4, you know what they absolutely could do, and we saw them do it? drag a mediocre or a bad team to a winning record in the playoffs. Chris Paul's missed playoffs one year in his career, and he was hurt for 30% of it. And you might say, oh, he was on great teams. Not early in New Orleans, he wasn't. And when I say he's never missed the playoffs, after his first couple years in the league, I should say. For all these guys, we're talking about year 3 and beyond. The only time he missed the playoffs was the year he missed a lot of the year due to injury. And the teams early in his career in New Orleans weren't great with respect to David West. And last year's team, the Thunder, that was not a great team. Russell Westbrook has missed the playoffs one time. And that time, his team won 45 games and lost it on a tiebreaker to New Orleans. He's never been on a bad team. And the first year without Durant, averaged a triple-double and dragged Victor Oladipo and Steven Adams to the postseason. James Harden, since he went to Houston, sometimes he's had excellent supporting casts. His first year there, he didn't. The last year before they got Chris Paul, he didn't. And guess what? Never missed the postseason. 40-plus wins every single season. I was excited last year to see if Steph could do that. He broke his hand. They then decided not to put him back out there. They wanted the pick. They didn't. Fine, whatever. And then tragically, Klay gets hurt again. So now we're going to get a second chance at it. And watching the Warriors last night and watching Steph last night, what I thought was a coin flip, could he do it? I now think it's 80-20 against. That while it is 100% accurate to say, take the 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018 Warriors, Steph Curry was a better fit on those teams than any other perimeter player in the league. Russ couldn't have done what Steph did. Harden couldn't have done what Steph did. CP3 couldn't have done what Steph did. I think we might learn this year that the opposite is also true. That on the 2017 Thunder, Steph Curry could not have done what Russell Westbrook did, dragging that team to the playoffs. On the 2015 or 2012 Rockets, or 2008 Hornets, or 2020 Thunder, that Russ couldn't have done what James Harden or Chris Paul did. Or that Steph couldn't have done what James Harden or Chris Paul did. And when you're talking about, like I said a moment ago, I think Durant's the 12th greatest player of the last 50 years. Steph's the 13th. Why is Steph behind Durant? Durant had to join Steph's team. Steph's got more MVPs. Steph's got more titles. Because Kevin Durant's not missing the playoffs. He's healthy, he's in his prime, he's just not going to miss the playoffs. Doesn't matter what's around him. I don't know that after this season, we're going to be able to say the same thing about Steph Curry.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.